Very, very excited today to have a special guest with us to present some of her best practices, lessons, and I'm going to say amazing insights on change management. Today, we are welcoming Lisa Cervantes from the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, or DFAS organization, as we affectionately call it. And she is a person who I met about 4 months ago, I suppose, 3 or 4 months ago. And we have just been having a blast talking about change management and knowledge management ever since then. So really excited to have you here today, Lisa.
Thank you.
Lisa leads organizations out of change chaos and into change readiness. What a great statement. She believes that change-ready teams are equipped for resilience and ready to go first. And in her current role, she focuses on people-powered progress for a defense agency's multi-billion-dollar change portfolio. And wait till you see some of the things she's going to share with us today. It's pretty powerful. And really hopes that she really reached out and wanted to do this presentation today for to help, right? She sees the challenges in knowledge management with change and says she really wants her tips and tricks to be able to support you with your next change initiative and all those things that you need to do to improve any of your business outcomes. And she has a degree in organizational leadership management and is pursuing a master's in I love this, positive organizational development and change. What a great thing to strive for. So welcome today, Lisa. We look so forward to hearing from you. And before we kick it over to Lisa, because APQC is research-based, and I am Linda Broxick, the research lead here at APQC for Knowledge Management, we're going to start with just a couple of pieces of research, which I think is going to really help you see why we're even spending so much time talking about change management these days. This year, when we did our 2024 priorities survey with all of our members, those people who work in knowledge management, and I will say also process improvement, all say their top skill set to continue to develop is change management. And I say continue to develop because for 4 straight years running, when we've done these priorities surveys, change management has been at the top of the list. Now it's varying a little bit up and down. So I think we're beginning to see a little bit of progress in the things that we're able to do from a change perspective. But it is an area of focus that we're going to continue to do more research on and continue to bring you best practices from members like Lisa. The other thing I wanted to show you today is a study that we did about a year and a half ago, where we really were trying to dig in and find out, okay, if change is one of those skill sets that knowledge managers really need to develop, what are the things we're doing well already, and what are those areas of improvement? And this is just a little insight into really where we all fell, again, about 18 months ago. So again, this is why we're continuing to have this conversation. But some of the strengths were really in this concept of having that more centralized change management department that helps to set the stage, identify frameworks and capabilities that we're all trying to improve upon in our organization. Also doing things like measuring the change value, conducting those gap assessments, things like that, and the peer-led training, right? Using your subject matter experts to really help get those messages out as well. Some of the areas of improvement, though, that we were still seeing are about having change plans for everything. A lot of people probably have experienced change management in the technology organization, which is fantastic, rolling out new technologies, but trying to really get it at that higher level. When we have organization-wide transformations, why do we not have better change plans, right? So we need to get a little bit better at that. Also, engaging employees early. How often can we say that? And I know Lisa's probably going to talk about that. The earlier the engagement, the better, right? But really getting those folks engaged early in the change journey and trying to formalize or really help those people in the business who do want to help be a part of the change. What does that look like to be a change agent or a change champion, and really helping to shepherd them through that process as well? So this is just a little bit of insight into some of the research that we've already got in our resource library, and one of the reasons why we focus on change so much. So before we get started, as always, we love to collect more information from you. So to help Lisa get started, we're going to start with a poll. And just quickly, if you're thinking about change in your own organizations, what are some of those areas that you can improve upon? Is it about the methodology, or is it about leadership or training or rewards and recognition? We look forward to kind of seeing, usually we have a pretty good mix here, but Some people say, do I really only get to pick one? Sometimes it's more than one. So think about maybe that one that's the most challenging for you. And we'll give this one just a second. While we're waiting for this poll, I have to admit I was getting distracted looking at the chat and seeing where everyone was calling in from. It was kind of exciting to see. We've got people from Toronto and Quebec and Australia, and I think Mexico. We just got somebody logged in from Mexico. And then I saw somebody that's from near my hometown that I used to work with who logged on as well. And so it's just always exciting to see the groups of people that we get together. So, all right, let's go ahead and see what we got for the poll. Oh, yeah, look at that. It's kind of pretty good mix. So we're not struggling with COM or rewards and recognition quite as much as we are with maybe that consistent methodology, the skills, and the leadership.
Yeah, I can see that.
Kind of at the top. So this is great. And one thing I didn't remind everybody of at the beginning was please feel free to use the chat. If you have a question or a comment that you want to make with something that Lisa is discussing, please throw it in the chat. We're going to keep monitoring this. Also, there's a Q&A feature. If you want to post a question in the Q&A, we will monitor that as well. We'll try to make sure that we answer all of the questions throughout the presentation, but sometimes if we get a lot, just know that we capture them all and they will be part of the webinar write-up at the end. So you'll get a copy of the presentation, you'll get a recording of this, but we also do a summary, and sometimes we'll even do some shorter videos that come out of the webinar so that we can go back and make sure that we've captured everything that we've talked about in this webinar today. So with that being said, it's time. I'm going to let our guest take over and take us on her journey of change.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for everybody for joining us today. I too was watching where everybody was joining in from. Wow, what a great crowd you have here. This knowledge management togetherness, even though we're in a virtual environment, really does help bring us together. And hopefully today in our conversation, we can learn a little bit more about how we are truly interconnected and how best we can create benefits for each other, no matter what our strengths are or where our defined focus is or discipline is. Next slide, please. So before we jump into the presentation, Linda did mention that I'm from the Defense Finance and Accounting Service. I want to share a little information with you about our agency. What you're seeing here on this slide and the next, you can find in the public domain. It's just a really small excerpt from, I believe this is our annual agency's financial report. We do produce this annually. And this report is about 121 pages. So what I want you to know specifically about DFAS is that we process millions of transactions per year. We disperse billions of dollars, and we manage trillions of dollars of benefit funds. Next slide, please. If I do say so myself, what's so impressive about the work that we do are who we perform all of these tasks on behalf of. Members of the military services and those support organizations that ensure they have the tools and resources they need, whether they're here in the United States or someplace abroad. In addition, we support other non-DoD organizations, for example, the Executive Office of the President of the United States. All of those millions, billions, and trillions of aha moments I shared with you on the previous slide are produced with just under 11,000 people. 23% of them have an advanced degree, and 19% of us are military veterans. Next slide, please. Here's our agenda for today. What I want to talk about are a few things that you already saw in your poll: methodologies and skills needed, leadership buy-in. Also, I saw, although training is low, I want to ask you a couple of questions about training. And so to me, I put the value of workflows at the top of this list, and let's talk about why. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I want you to share your chats, your response in the chat. Share your critical needs for organizational change management. Not what you think you hear or know from books, but what do you need specifically with your program? Drop that in the chat for us, please.
I'll come on screen and help you when we start getting some responses in here. So
Yeah, thanks.
consistent change and buy-in, and
That is, yeah.
a holistic approach to change. That's a pretty common one too.
Awareness.
Leadership involvement and commitment. Training the sponsors, taking accountability, awareness, leadership.
Lots of leader.
Lots of, oh yeah, integrating change into current processes and plans. That's a good one too.
One of my faves. We'll definitely cover that in here too.
A solid plan, moving away from change chaos. Overcoming resistance.
Communication.
Adoption.
Adoption.
Shifting priorities. Yeah, that's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
We changed our mind. We're going to go this direction now. Right?
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks everybody for sharing your thoughts. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's see if we can jump into some of these topics for you.
Oops, I think I hit it twice. Sorry. There you go.
All right. You know, as I was thinking about what we should talk about, what I'd like to share with you, consistently in many of the leadership meetings that I'm in, we hear this number here from John Cotter from his book, A Sense of Urgency. 70% of change efforts fail. That was way back in 2008. However, moving forward to 2022, McKinsey and Company did an extensive research, and we're not getting better. 75% of transformational efforts fail. Let's ensure that this group here does better for each other and for the people we support. Whatever your workforce makeup is, whatever your customer base is, this group here, can no longer accept 25% as a great, thumbs up outcome of change initiatives across your agencies, organizations, etc. Let's do better. Next slide, please. So workflows. Why are workflows so critical? When we think about workflows, I like to get into the weeds. As you saw from the logo on one of those previous slides, we manage change, like the people side of change for us. And the workflows become really critical when the people within organizations understand the inputs and outputs that they create and the effects that their work has downstream or in reverse if there's an error made somewhere along the way. That kind of knowledge creates a whole different kind of buy-in and acceptance at the individual level and responsibility to not only myself as a person experiencing change, but also to my peers and my leaders. And those people that are going to be coming in and filling in behind me. I want to leave a legacy of wellness, a legacy of things that are impressive and I'm proud of. And so understanding the workflow at that individual level is a critical need. In our agency, we've watched certain organizations start to really pinpoint how can we create change readiness and change resilience throughout our organization and throughout a particular, we refer to them as mission areas, specific organizations that conduct various different outputs and inputs for our customers. And so we have watched their scores, their customer service scores, increase significantly over time to the point where the agency now is starting to call them out for what went well and what continues to persist as a best practice. When we understand workflows, we're able to kind of get better into the little bit finer detail of the organization and create better strategies that are more clearly defined, that your individuals on your teams can understand what they need to do. We're able to identify redundancies throughout the whole workflow and create efficiencies. Here's something really critical: the optimization of the customer experience. When I know I'm not going to be repeating things down the line, or my coworkers are not repeating processes, and that our customers truly are receiving the best of the best service that we can create for them, we not only improve the experience for the customers, but we also start to improve that workforce culture, which then will permeate throughout the organization. Next slide, please. I saw on Linda's poll that we have questions about methodologies. We need a consistent methodology. Well, sometimes a consistent methodology might not be the case for what you do if you're a consultant, or how you manage a program if you're within a company or an organization. So methodologies such as ProSize ADKAR or Cotter's 8 steps, they give us a lot of good information, helpful tips, and they can help us manage change. From my perspective, what we really need is a framework that is methodology neutral, which is why I have gravitated more towards the Association of Change Management Professionals standard and their code of ethics. What we managed within the organization was a bunch of question marks when we spoke about some of these other methodologies. Our Lean Six practitioners, project managers, and the people who manage them had a hard time connecting ADKAR, ADKAR, to project management. It just was such a hard transition for us. But the Association of Change Management Professionals has 5 phases. Project management has 5 phases. Lean Six has gates. So we were able to really align those association of the ACMP's standard to our project management and to our Lean Six methodologies. So we've created a hybrid that works best for our agency. In a future slide, I'll show you the benefit. Next slide, please. Acceptance leadership. Much of what we hear in change management, when we're in webinars or when we're in seminars or symposium, we hear consistently the baggage of change, the emotional impact of change. We hear so much negativity. We hear that, if we don't do something, then something negative is going to happen. Well, I'm going to challenge you. How do we get better? How do we improve upon that 75%? I'd like to challenge you to start thinking about change management and some of the critical events that occur, not as resistance management, but as acceptance leadership. If we walk back a few slides and think about the workflows, an individual can accept what he or she does, what he or she produces during any part of their given day. And once we have this kind of acceptance leadership at the individual level, we can start to permeate that and create a more resilient organization. Sharing knowledge throughout the organization and ensuring that your different stakeholder groups have the needs, their specific needs met, is extremely critical. When the stakeholder groups understand what they need to know, they can also accept better what changes are going on, how they will be impacted, and they'll use that way they feel to influence others around them. So stakeholder groups, sometimes I've observed where we're working with project teams who are used to talking with, on a more regular basis, our senior or executive leadership. And when it's time for them to start having conversation with the mission area or the working groups, they're speaking so far in the clouds, they're using terminology that our working groups have trouble with. And that creates that conflict or friction or any of those other terms that you'd like to use. So let's start walking ourselves closer to acceptance leadership. Next slide, please. Sponsorship and building coalitions, accountability and relationships absolutely matter. When I began this position in particular, the person that sat here before me, they had a much smaller coalition. I had this really great benefit of having been the customer of our organizational change management program. So with me from the other positions I had held, I brought a pretty strong coalition from human resources, from information technology, we have an organization called Site Support Office. Those are the people on site that manage the facility. How do we make sure that when we are going through a change, if we're downsizing space or increasing space, that the people side of change includes knowledge and awareness of the team members who have to move from desk to desk, office to office, floor to floor. Those are the kinds of things that get left out of the conversation. We have subject matter experts involved in our relationships. Those subject matter experts can, if they're seated at the table with us while we're working through change, they can help us acknowledge extremely important details about the process that need to be addressed to ensure our team members can transition to their new X, right? New system, new process, new procedure, new organization, etc. Next slide, please. This is a critical concept for me to share with you. Start where your organizational team needs you to start. In the background of this slide, you can see this really intricate process workflow. All the stickies are there, all the colors are there, all the boxes are there. Sometimes when we have, we're working with our project teams, the project teams are much farther along in their knowledge about what they are changing or developing, in their awareness of how the process is going to change, in their capability. Often the project team or members of the project team has already tested something. By the time we get to the organization, the project teams are so far advanced that when we bring our project teams into the conversation, they can get a little bit lost. I saw training as one of the poll items in your poll, Linda. And what I observed was that training really doesn't have as much attention placed on it with this particular group as I've seen it in some other groups. I've been at training before. It's equally as critical to make sure you're having these conversations with why are you getting training? What is your role going to be for the training? I was in a training session one time where a gentleman, he really didn't understand why he was there. The training was exceptionally expensive. And somebody said, you just sit down and accept the training. His peers said to him, and he goes, well, okay, I will, but I retire next week. I really don't understand why I'm here. And so having those conversations prior to when we're bringing in training, like, why are you here? Why are you going? If we had had that conversation, perhaps somebody else on his team could have received training and could have shared for a longer term than this particular gentleman. Next slide, please. Appreciative inquiry. I love appreciative inquiry. When we talk about how best to manage this transition of increasing the 25% to 30 or more, I wanted you to think about what is appreciative inquiry. When you look at this definition here, it focuses on leveraging an organization's core strengths rather than seeking to overcome or minimize its weaknesses. Have you ever been part of a process where an organization wasn't performing very well? And rather than bringing in a team of people or a person who can help them understand what it is that they do so well, recall the benefits of how you feel when you're producing something of high value, high quality, high customer acceptance, high customer experience. Instead, sometimes we'll have organizations that are not performing well, and we kind of come down on them. We let them know what we don't love about what's going on, and we continue to reiterate this. Statistically, when we think about behavior, groups that are treated this way have a harder time getting better. Groups who are consistently reminded that something is poor or not going well have a really hard time of pulling themselves out of that environment and into one that is more positive. Appreciative inquiry, the discovery of what you did within your organization once upon a time that was really awesome. The dream about what you can co-create together, designing, co-creation with your peers, with your teams. And then that destiny, how do I now start to get the empowerment of your strengths and how that manages the emotions in a much more positive way? We've done some appreciative inquiry. And when we walked into the organization, the team was really down and you could feel the emotion in the room. And as we walked through the appreciative inquiry of very specific steps with them, we noticed that the environment started to pick up. Their attitudes and their body language started to increase. We could hear the excitement again in their voices compared to the way they walked into the room. I even had one of the ladies, she was a supervisor, say to me, "Oh my gosh, you've given me back my hope. I think we can pull this off." They were co-creating in their sessions. And by the time we had their next level of leadership join us, the next level of leadership was so moved by what they co-created. They called the office and said, "I really want to start working on this right now." So, building things together, co-creating benefits based upon our positive experiences within the same organization can be a giant way for us to start shifting away from resistance management to leadership acceptance leadership. Linda, I saw you come on screen.
Yeah, I love this, and we're starting to call this the other AI, right? Because
Yes.
AI, artificial intelligence is so popular right now. And someone put in the chat that they both rely on asking good questions, which is a great point.
Yes.
And I just wonder if for those that might not be familiar with appreciative inquiry, um, the practical component of this, when you talk about co-creation and all of that, and I think of this as being at the heart of this is, being able to show empathy and ask questions and do things like that. Do you have an example? I feel like from a knowledge management or even process perspective, we might think of this as that process of, design thinking workshops or human-centric approaches and things like that. Can you talk maybe to that, maybe some of the similarities or what this maybe looks like in practice a little bit? Can I put you on?
In practice, it really is, it will kind of blow you away, right? People are honestly, they're somewhat apprehensive when we join together. But by the time we finish, there's so much more energy in the room. When we come together, we do want to ensure that we've had the ability to create those questions, as you mentioned. The questions are designed to help the participants think about what the future of the organization could look like if they were all working together and kind of in this dream and design phase of appreciative inquiry. In that will come many suggestions. And as you continue to work through the process and ask the questions, you will actually start to see where certain suggestions become repetitive. And that's really kind of the sweet spot, so to speak, when you start to see that those common elements start to arrive more frequently, you've kind of zeroed in on what are the best things we can do for this organization and who are the best teams and people to pull in to the development of the solutions, and then taking that into the organizations. I would encourage you to have really strong project managers in this kind of an environment to help you move this forward. Also, agile practitioners. I was working with a company not too long ago, and they were trying to understand how to improve a very specific part of their organization that creates and shares data. And so data became, the big focus of this organization. And internal to these discussions were some agile practitioners, and boy, they were on the edge of their seats, Linda, because they were like, oh, hey, we can really help fix this. Once those common elements started to come out, those sessions, we broke everybody up and we had smaller teams and we asked very specific questions. Those sessions where you're co-creating, the energy in the room is honestly palpable. And then moving the organization forward again with a discipline that can help, bring them to the finish line is what I have observed are some critical elements.
I love that. And what a great way to start out a change in a positive manner and really understand your stakeholders, right? That in early engagement, understanding your stakeholders and using this capability. And somebody put in the chat too that sometimes people see this as it can be judged as touchy-feely, but it's actually tremendously successful. That's what someone put in the chat. So somebody with some experience doing this as well also agrees with you. So great stuff. Thank you for jumping in and adding a little bit more on that one. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I've heard that before, the touchy-feely side of things, and bring them into the room anyway, right?
Yeah.
And we'll blow their minds with what actually happens when we get these groups together. I've seen, I haven't participated in it, but I've seen where the United States Navy used appreciative inquiry to create solutions for what they were doing. And they maintain an organization that continues to do appreciative inquiry. So Department of Defense does use it. And I know other organizations, academia and large Fortune 500s use it too.
Awesome. Great.
Next slide, please. So what we're talking about here today, does it work? For us, it works. The Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, an annual survey provided to federal employees. Last year, it was given, I believe, to 1.6 million federal employees. We had about a 45% return. For our agency, we like to look at a peer position. And I'm not usually in the habit of reading slides, but I want to read these 2 bullet points to you. Employees in my work unit adapt to changing priorities. And an employee's observation of how their managers manage change. Managers make effective changes to address challenges facing our organization. We've seen increases in these numbers for our agency over time, and we continue to see how the training that we perform, how the engagement that we are producing across the agency is showing us the benefits of kind of an end-to-end environment. We don't just do change management in a bubble. We do communities of practice where we have other practitioners, change managers, et cetera, throughout the agency. They will come in and talk about how they're using change management. They will come in and talk about how they're using our tools. We revitalized our internal portal presence to simplify how our customers can find information on demand training, tools that they can use to manage their own processes, supervisory tools, employee tools. And when you get to that next bullet point, over the last 6 years since I've been at the agency, we have seen an 800, or I've been in this position, an 881% increase in the organizational change management program demand. That sounds crazy, right? Linda asked me last week, did you get the people to come along with that demand? What we did in our agency, we did get a couple of people added to the change management team, Linda. But we didn't necessarily focus on, oh, I wish I could do more if I had more people, or wow, if my team were bigger, I could really do a lot more here. We kind of took the high road, and our director challenged us to infuse existing skills in our project managers, whether they were traditional or agile project managers, or our Lean Six practitioners, we started training them on our tools. We started letting them know that we do not expect them to be the change managers of any given event, but we need them to be change agents. We need them to know some basic information about how we manage change within our agency. We need them to know where to go to get tools and how best to provide high-level guidance to the supervisors and the other leaders that are engaged in the changes they're helping to create within the agency. So when we look at the transition from the hybrid, from the strict pro side, in the last year, we've seen a 70% increase in program demand. So, you know, when I mentioned to you earlier, although ADCAR, I am an ADCAR fan and a ProSci fan, it really was hard for us to understand what that meant. But utilizing the ACMP standard helped us clarify that, streamline it, and make it a little bit more connected to those other project management disciplines within the agency. Next slide, please. So the continuity of what we're talking about, continuity between change, project management, leadership. When I joined this team, we had a bit of a hard time trying to move the change management program forward. So what I decided to do was connect my change management caboose to the faster moving project management train. I'm not always invited to the table as soon as the project begins, but over time, that has become increasingly more evident that they want me there. I'm less and less of an afterthought to them. I have heard our organization, our agency directors, transition their own comments from, "Are you doing change management?" to accepting the answer, "Yes, ma'am, I have a communications plan," to asking, "Are you doing change management? Have you reached out to the organization to support you? Have you created," we use an impact analysis, which walks us through 6 different impact areas. Do you know from the impact analysis where you need to focus your specific change events? They're asking some much more detailed questions that say a couple of things to me. They're learning, they're appreciating, they also want change-ready organizations, and from the top, they're helping us push these concepts and requirements, or let's say knowledge about how to manage change. They're helping us push this throughout the organization. They're helping us, you know, make the roots of our foundational program stronger. We're taking that and running with it and creating the branches by engaging our project management organizations. And we're stretching our bench strength, so to speak, by utilizing our other disciplines within the agency to help manage change throughout our requirements. With that, we are reaching new heights. We are engaged in some really difficult and transformational change, and we're doing it. Next slide, please. People-powered progress. Linda shared this with you in her opening statements. I truly believe that what we do, from the creation to the light bulb, to the creation of the steam engine, to the transition of magnetic high-speed bullet trains, to what we do today in our offices, if we didn't have the people performing the tasks, if we didn't have them understanding their workflows, we wouldn't be able to move ourselves past, remember the first personal telephones, like in those giant briefcase things that weighed about 50 pounds, to our tiny little smartphones now, right? All of that creativity and capability, powered by people, great ideas. Engagement improves, belonging improves. Recent studies about engagement equals belonging. Belonging results in productivity. When we combine all of these together, we create change-ready organizations. We hear about change saturation. I was in a conversation last week and I actually said, I don't even hear that, change saturation. I work for the Department of Defense. Not one day of the week are they going to let me say, I'm just change saturated. I can't move on today. That's never going to happen. We do the work of the Congress. We do work that we do to support men and women who are protecting this country. We have to be change ready and we have to be change resilient. Are we there? Would we say that we're there and we don't have anything else to do? Absolutely not. But we have significantly improved over time and we continue to get better. We challenge ourselves as an agency and we challenge ourselves as individuals to ensure that we're pushing these concepts down into the agency, throughout the organizations, to the individual level to get us to where we need to be in this change resilient environment. Next slide, please. Linda, that's all I have for you and the folks that have joined us today. Do we have any questions that we can answer?
I am going to check the chat. You got to thank you. As
Thank you.
As a citizen, they said we're helping the country do the hard work, do the hard things. So you got a couple of thank yous in there for the work you do. I think people who are recipients perhaps of the services that you provide at DFAS. So that's amazing. Cindy put a comment in here too. And Cindy, you're welcome to jump on if you're able to, but I love the personal people powered programs. She says, I love PPP.
Yeah.
She said, I think that recognizing ownership as part of workflow understanding is important. People are very committed and proud. But there she is. You can speak yourself.
Hi, Lisa. Hi,
Hi,
everyone. No,
Cindy.
Lisa, so of course APQC so appreciates your focus on workflow because we do think that it's always easier to address the work that people do before starting to point fingers. It's easier to talk about a process or a workflow than something that people may be doing incorrectly. But I've just experienced recently through some change efforts we're doing on a project where you do have to consider that whole end-to-end process because what your changes are may not be what other people want to do. And while we've done a lot of socialization, there's always that one hurdle to get over. And it's usually because somebody owns it or has been given ownership to it and they protect it. And you have to understand that and just start figuring out ways around it. So I just really love that whole PPP.
Thank you very much.
I should say, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lisa, I think you gave us some different ways to think about some things that, for those of us who have probably been trying to learn about change or studying change or doing change in our roles, you've given us a few new, I'll say almost new ways of thinking about it. Like, I like your acceptance leadership versus thinking about things as resistance, right? Because resistance feels icky and scary and negative.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's a real thing, but thinking about moving toward acceptance instead of trying to manage resistance, it's just that flipping the script a little bit to think about that. And that's one of those things, acceptance leadership is. Can you share more about that? Like, how is that? Does that terminology work within your organization pretty well? Is that something that people have kind of jumped on board with and are embracing, I'll say?
It's emerging within our organization.
Okay.
And to be honest, we have a little bit of a tug of war within our own team, right? Well, they're like, that's what everybody knows. Well, yes, that's what everybody knows, but just because they know it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to continue to have the discussion in that way. If we start thinking about things in that positive way and kind of that AI-centric way, we start to create a change or shift in the emotion toward change. Yeah. Right? If I feel empowered at the individual level to make that change, I have accepted what I do, what I produce. what my role is as an individual person within the organization, and again, how I affect the workflow.
Yeah.
And so the acceptance leadership is much more, when I created a training that said acceptance leadership, and everything in it is so, like, the slides are brighter, the comments are more positive. You won't find anything in there that makes you feel like you can't do it. Anybody at any level can be a change agent, and your choice is to be change ready or change resilient
Resilience.
as a person, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I like that focus on the person, because in change, you know, it's always difficult to shift an entire organization. You're shifting individuals one person at a time, right?
Right.
And each person has their kind of aha moment and their acceptance, right, into that change. So we have some questions flowing in from people now. I'm gonna throw a couple out here.
Okay.
This is pretty common. I'm sure we hear this a lot. As a team of one change manager, how would you begin to get in front of those project managers, or where else could you begin if you can't seem to get in with maybe the existing project managers?
Human resources is another place. My favorite place also, it's operations, what's going on within the organization. Create your coalition. When people know more about you and what you're all about, they get curious, right? Being a change manager or a change agent requires one to be curious. And when you're curious and want to know more, they start to observe that. And so greater invitations to participate of smaller projects, perhaps at first. And then I don't really turn anybody down, no matter what the size of the project is. We've managed some projects that affect the whole agency, so almost 11,000 people. We've had one for 400 people. We've had one for 1,000 people. We've had one for 17. So it really doesn't matter to me how big or small the issue is, the changes or the expanded effects of it. When you know what you're doing as a change manager, you can, just kind of fit yourself in there sideways, get to know and build your network and your coalition within the organization. And that starts to create that level of trust in you, that level of curiosity, the notion that you are here to help make this transition for them even easier, when they think it's they might not even think about it at all, or they think it's just too complicated. Focus on that people side of it. I really do keep myself out of the project management environment. I understand it, I can do it, but I'm not certified in it. I tell my project managers, I'm not a project management expert, but I do understand change. Here's another tip for you. Maybe what some of my project managers have done is they'll send me their plan. And this is like one of the easiest ways I can think of to kind of get started. Send me your plan and I will make some comments on the very far right, and I will make some suggestions of where you can add change management. I always like to tell them they can accept some, none, or all of what I suggest. And I'm here to help them no matter what they would like to do.
I like that. That's a good way to get in and have it be kind of less intrusive, right? It doesn't
Yes.
feel super intrusive. So I like
Yes.
that. As you can imagine, we have a couple of questions. I'm going to maybe put them into kind of one, but there's people asking a little bit about, how do you measure the effectiveness of this? How do you measure the results? How do you show that it's adding value to the business, right? All of
That
those
gets
things.
a little bit tricky, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we talk about internal to our organization. What is a good metric? What is a success factor? I don't use them within change management. I've observed them more easily in our operations areas, so to speak. For example, we had one customer that came to us. They manage a 400-person organization. The customer had, I believe, 30 supervisors. 90% of them had less than 1 year of supervisory experience. Her metrics, red, yellow, green, her metrics were largely red. She was really upset and she didn't like the negative publicity she was getting. So she called us and she said, how can you help me? And what we did like extensive training for them. And then she was starting to see her metrics. The training we did was like from the ground up, from the employees to the supervisors to the leadership of the organization. We helped in provide ways that they could start talking about what they're doing within the organization, again, reiterating the workflows. She presented back to us after about, I want to say maybe 3 months of this real focused activity. She was starting to see a change in her metrics. And when she was finished with when we were finished with the timeline, she reported to our agency executives that she had greens that got greener, yellows that turned to green, and reds that turned green, which she never thought she could accomplish because they had been red for so long. They actually originated, she believed, with the customer. So utilizing the organization's metrics, build a more, a greater sense of buy-in. If you can help shift what they're doing to a better and more acceptable color, then that's how you're creating the benefit. You're teaching change management, you're building foundations, you're enhancing existing capabilities and helping them move forward.
And for all of those knowledge management people on the call, that should sound very familiar because with trying to create a knowledge sharing environment in your own organizations, it really is about shifting the mindset, shifting the behaviors. And we always talk about adding value to the business, the bottom line. And when people ask about measures, there are ways to measure knowledge management components, but the best measurement system is always, how are you adding value to the business? What are those business metrics? And how are you, showing that correlation to impact those business metrics? So I think change have their own capabilities to measure, but it also is a big deal to be able to measure the impact to the business metrics that you're trying to affect, right, within your organization. So it's very hard to correlate that and to talk about it and to distinguish it sometimes and even articulate it to the leaders and to those around you. But that is really, I think, at the heart of it. So great. I love that. Great answer. Let's see, we've got some other questions in here. How do you select sponsors? And what management level do you target? This is an interesting question.
Yeah, with us, our sponsors kind of come to us. So we've got an easy one there. I'm sorry I don't have a more intricate answer for you, but our sponsors come to us. They are generally assigned by the position that they hold within the organization. And depending upon whether or not they are the organization requesting the change, they can become the sponsor, or a higher level executive, depending upon the dollar value of the change impact, a multi-million-dollar system change. That's not going to be somebody down here. Will be somebody further up in the chain of command.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Sponsorship's always one of those interesting topics as well, because it's very challenging to do any sort of initiative if you do not have a leadership sponsor or somebody there to kind of knock down those barriers, right? And be the voice of the change, I'll say. So,
Linda, even when you have sponsors that are assigned to you, sometimes they still need coaching.
Absolutely.
Right? To understand what it is that the collective needs to produce. And sometimes it's not well received. But I just keep chipping away at it. You really you're going to have to get up really way early if you're going to try and knock me down a few pegs. So I just keep going and going, and eventually it'll kind of get there. But it really does come across in your capability and your level of acceptance for what you do, actually, as a knowledge manager, as a change manager, the position of authority or the amount of authority you come at it with, the conversations you're able to have, and the different ways you can talk about the intricacies and complexities of what you do and how it connects to what they do.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And there's one more thing I was going to mention. There's a couple of people have asked a couple of times, like, how do I find out about ACMP? And somebody else put a link in there. So there's other people that are familiar with it that put a link in there to some of the ACMP materials.
Yeah,
and it does have some good information. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
And with that, I think I'm going to take the last 5 minutes to close us out. So I'm going to thank Lisa for an amazing overview of how you think and how you're managing change in your organizations and in your organization. And I love it. I think you gave everybody some new things to think about and some new ways to think about change in their own world. So I very much appreciate it. And just to close us out for the day, I'm going to just remind everybody what's coming up next from a knowledge management perspective. We have webinars every month. You can see the next few that are coming out. And we actually, our quarterly roundtable that happens in 2 weeks happens to be on the same topic. So once a quarter, we try to have a roundtable, and this is not like a webinar. This is member only. That's what the little lock thing means on there. So if you are a member of APQC and you'd like to join us for the roundtable, this is a more discussion. This is not us presenting anything to you. This is us having quite a few questions, getting some discussions going. Typically, we do have to use the chat for discussions because there's too many people to allow everybody the ability to be able to talk. But we try to keep it so that everybody has a chance to have a voice. We're going to talk deeper about change management. So hopefully you're able to join us. You can go to the website and sign up. You can even submit a question ahead of time. That'll help us frame our questions so that we're answering the kinds of questions you really want to find out about when you come. But as you can imagine, the rest of this year, we're going to start focusing a little bit on some of the technology insights. We've got a survey that just closed on KM technology. So I'm excited. We're going to be sharing some of that coming up next. Along with content management, that's in April. And we have our conference, our annual conference. So if you're not coming to the conference and you never have and you want to, you really should. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way for people to connect. It's a great way for knowledge and process practitioners to connect. And the conference, I don't have it on this chart here, but the conference theme this year is connect, grow, and change. So we've got that change theme kind of streaming throughout APQC right now. It's always about connection when it comes to knowledge management, and it's always about growing, right? So if you have an opportunity to be at the conference, we'd love to see you there. And it is exciting for our pre-conference workshops this year. We're actually having a managing change workshop for the first time. We haven't had one on change. We always have it in a lot of our curriculum for a lot of our different courses where we talk about process improvement and knowledge management capabilities, but we've been having a lot of people ask us, they want to go just a little bit deeper. So just to give you some insight into this is framework and methodology agnostic, right? So you can come and you can learn about it regardless of what system you might have set up in your own organization. This is just going to help you hone those skills a little bit better and know how to embrace all of those aspects of change, regardless of what framework or methodology that you use in your organization. So hopefully this is a well-attended and super fun, exciting workshop at our conference this year. But as always, we have a lot of things going on in both the process and knowledge management. And also we have 3 other areas: supply chain, human capital management, and financial management. So if you have interest in any of those areas, we have a lot of that as well. And like all of our webinars, we like to give you some resources to take a look at on our resource library. This is where our research and the insights from our research live. And of course, we put a lot out there around change management because that was our topic today. But I also put some things out there that have to do with knowledge management. If you're looking to get started at the research in our library, these are great places to get started and just go out and take a look. And this webinar itself, along with the presentation slides and a summary write-up that will include all the questions and answers in the chat, without names, of course, it'll be anonymous, but we'll do a summary of that as well. And that will also be in our resource library. So you can access it anytime after this webinar is over. And the slides and the recording will be available really quickly within a couple of days. The summary write-up takes just a little bit longer for us to get all of the information put together. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and thank Miss Lisa one more time. It was so great to have you here, and we appreciate your time. And I wish everybody to have a wonderful rest of your day. And please look for the email in your inbox, and please fill out the survey if you can and give us some feedback on this. It helps Lisa and us at APQC make sure that we have amazing webinars going forward. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I appreciate your time.
Bye.